I hadn't seen her in almost 8 years, but the moment she said my name, everything tilted a little. It was one of those gray afternoons that made the whole town look like it hadn't fully woken up. I'd stopped by a quiet cafe near the station, the kind with chipped mugs and a soft hum of old music, mostly to kill time before heading back to my apartment. Then I heard it, a lie. Her voice didn't match the years I'd added since last time. It sounded exactly the same. When I turned, there she was, Claire, my best friend's older sister. She used to drive us to school when I was 15 and she was already working full-time. Back then, she'd wear her tied up and talk to us like we were still kids. Now, the only thing that hadn't changed was the way she looked at people. Like she actually saw them. "Wow," she said, stepping closer. "You've grown up too fast." It was a simple thing to say, but it landed heavier than it should have. We stood there in that pause people do when they're not sure if it's okay to hug or not. She smiled first, soft, unhurried, and nodded toward the counter. "Coffee's on me, you still take it black," she remembered. I almost said something clever, but instead just nodded. We sat near the window. She set her phone face down beside her cup. I noticed she still stirred her coffee long after the sugar dissolved. I used to tease her about that. I almost did again. "Still in touch with Noah?" she asked, meaning her brother. "Not much lately," I said. "Different schedules," she nodded, glancing out the window. "That happens." The way she said it, like she wasn't just talking about schedules, made my stomach pull tight. She looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before. Not unwell, just quieter. Like she'd been keeping herself still for a long time. I told her about the dull office job I'd taken after college, about the apartment I barely kept tidy. She listened without interrupting, tracing the rim of her mug with her finger. Every now and then, she'd look at me with this half-smile that made me feel both younger and older than I was. There were tiny things. She'd tuck a strand of hair behind her ear when she was thinking, fold the napkin neatly when she spoke. I caught myself mirroring her once and had to look away. When it was time to go, she stood and brushed invisible crumbs off her sleeve. "It's nice, running into people you used to know," she said, but there was something wistful in it, like she already regretted saying it. Outside, the air smelled like rain. She pulled her coat tighter and smiled again. The polite kind this time. "Take care, Eli." She walked off toward the parking lot, her heels clicking against the wet pavement. I watched her unlock a small silver car and get in. She didn't look back, but before she drove off, her headlights flicked once, like a tiny wave. That night, I almost texted Noah, something stupid, like "Hey, saw your sister today." But the message sat unsent. Instead, I stared at my phone until a new message appeared. It was from an unknown number. "You forgot your scarf. I can drop it off tomorrow, if you're around." I didn't remember leaving any scarf behind. But I knew I'd say yes. And maybe that was the real problem. I told myself it was just politeness. That she only wanted to return the scarf. But when Claire texted, "Are you free after 5? I'll be nearby anyway," I didn't ask what nearby meant. She arrived carrying 2 cups of tea instead of a scarf. "They ran out of your usual," she said, handing me one. "Hope this'll do." Her tone was easy, casual, but her eyes lingered like she was checking something. Maybe the small apartment, maybe me. She sat on the edge of the couch, legs crossed neatly, her coat still on, the steam from her tea curled between us. I tried to sound relaxed. "So, what'd I forget exactly?" She smiled, that half-smile again. "An excuse." I laughed, quietly, and she laughed too. The kind that starts as air before it becomes sound. It was the first time in a long while the room didn't feel like it was only mine. We talked for a while. About small things. Her work at the hospital, how she'd started growing herbs in her kitchen window. Then, without meaning to, she said something that stayed with me. "It's strange," she murmured. "When I was your age, I thought 30 would feel settled. But it just doesn't stop shifting." Her thumb traced the lip of her cup. I could see the faint outline of her wedding ring tan line, a pale band around her finger. I started, then stopped. She glanced at me, amused. "Married?" "Not anymore. 5 years now." Something in her voice made it clear she wasn't looking for pity, just stating a fact that carried weight. I nodded, unsure what to say. My tea had gone cold, but I kept holding it anyway. At some point, the conversation drifted to no, her brother, my old friend. He said you barely text anymore, she said. Yeah, I replied. He's different now. Or maybe I am. She tilted her head slightly. You always were quieter than him. That line hit harder than I expected. Not because of what she said, but how she said it, softly like she remembered. There was silence after that. A long, steady one. The kind that doesn't need fixing. She noticed a sketchpad on my table, half-finished pencil drawings. She picked it up, flipped through. You still draw? Sometimes, I said. When it's quiet enough. She nodded, eyes lingering on a page of a faceless figure sitting by a window. This one looks lonely, she said. Maybe, I murmured. He's just waiting for someone. When she stood to leave, I followed her to the door. The air had that late, evening chill. She reached out, brushed something off my shoulder that probably wasn't there. Her fingers stayed a second too long. I'll see you around, Ely, she said softly. And I remember thinking. I didn't know if she meant it, but I wanted her to. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. I was walking back from the grocery store when I noticed her cart crookedly outside the cafe. She was sitting in the driver's seat, hands still on the wheel, eyes closed, not asleep, just paused. I hesitated before knocking on the window. She startled, then smiled as if she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't. Rough day? I asked. She exhaled through a half-laugh. Something like that. I offered to carry her bags inside. She didn't argue. The cafe was nearly empty. She ordered tea, I ordered nothing. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable anymore. Just too aware. She talked about her shift at the hospital. How an elderly patient had asked if she was married. I said no, she said, stirring her tea absently. And he looked at me like I'd told him something tragic. I smiled faintly. Maybe he just wanted you to be happy. Maybe, she said, eyes still down. Happiness feels like something I used to have time for. That line stayed in the air like steam that wouldn't fade. I wanted to tell her she still looked like someone who could find it again. Instead, I reached for a napkin that wasn't there. My hand brushed hers by accident. Neither of us moved right away. She pulled back first. You should be careful, she said quietly, eyes fixed on her cup. Off what? People see things that aren't there. I wanted to say but some things are there, but the words caught somewhere in my throat. Later that week, Noah called. It had been months. He asked if I was free to hang out. I lied, said I was busy. The truth was, I didn't want to see him and risk her name coming up. The guilt settled like dust. Barely visible, always there. Claire texted that evening, left a file in the cafe, you passing by. She didn't need me to get it. But I went anyway. When I found her waiting by the window table, she laughed softly. You really came? Yeah, I said. Guess I was nearby. We both knew that wasn't true. She reached for the file, but her fingers brushed mine again. Deliberate this time. Her thumb rested on my knuckle for half a heartbeat, enough to make the room shift. Her phone buzzed. She flinched, pulled her hand away, and checked the screen. It's Noah, she said, too quickly. Something cold and sharp moved through me. She silenced the call without answering. I should go, she whispered. I nodded, though every part of me wanted to ask her to stay. Just sit there, just breathe the same air for one more minute. As she turned to leave, she hesitated, glanced back, her expression unreadable. For a second, I thought she might come closer. Her lips parted like she was about to say something, but instead, she just smiled, small and sad, and then she was gone. For a while we stopped meeting in places that had names, no cafes, no text that said see you. Just coincidences, or what we pretended were coincidences. Once I ran into her at the park near the hospital. She was sitting on a bench, shoes off, her heels lined neatly beside her. The late sunlight made everything look like a faded photograph. She looked up, surprised but not unhappy. You again, she said. I sat down, leaving enough space between us to make it proper. Rough day? I asked, repeating the same line from before. Her smile barely appeared. You could say that. She leaned back, head tilted toward the trees. The wind carried the faint smell of rain in her perfume, subtle, familiar now. We talked about nothing for a while, the weather, her garden. The small things that fill space between what we're afraid to say. I told her my office was downsizing, that I might be looking for something new. She said, "You're still young," and meant it as comfort, but it sounded like distance. "I don't feel young," I said quietly. That made her turn. "Then stop trying to prove you're not." Her tone wasn't sharp, it was something worse, honest. A couple passed by, laughing loudly. We both watched them, our silence heavier than before. I said, "Does no one know we talk?" Her shoulders stiffened. "Why would he?" I shrugged, tracing the line of the bench with my thumb. "He used to tell me you worried about him too much. I guess I wonder if he'd say the same about me now." She gave a soft exhale, not quite a sigh. "You're not a kid anymore, Eli." "I don't." She stopped, looked away. "I shouldn't be here." "Then why are you?" I asked. She closed her eyes, just for a second. "Because it feels like I forget everything when I am." That sentence broke something quiet inside me. I didn't touch her, didn't move. But I could feel the air between us tighten, drawn thin as a thread. She looked down at her hands, hands that always seemed steady, and said, "You make me feel ridiculous." I shook my head. "You don't look ridiculous." "That's worse," she said, almost whispering. A pause stretched too long. She finally looked at me, really looked. And for the first time, I didn't look away. There was a soft tremor in her breath, something caught between restraint and wanting. If I'd leaned in, she wouldn't have stopped me. I could tell. But I didn't. Neither of us did. She reached for her shoes instead, slipped them on carefully. "You should head home before it gets dark," she said, voice steady again. I nodded.
Yeah.
But neither of us stood. For a long moment we just sat, side by side, strangers and something else. Finally, she asked, not looking at me, "Do you ever think we'd have met like this, if you weren't his friend?" I didn't answer. I didn't know if I could. For 2 weeks, nothing. No texts. No chance encounters. Not even her car in its usual spot near the hospital lot. At first, I told myself she was busy, long shifts, family visits, something normal. But the silence stretched in a way that didn't feel like coincidence anymore. I thought about going to the cafe, just in case. I didn't. Instead, I found myself walking past her street once, twice, pretending I was taking a shortcut home. Her blinds were half drawn. The light inside flickered like a TV left on for company. On the 3rd week, she texted, "Sorry I disappeared. Needed to clear my head. You're okay." I stared at it for a long time before replying, "Yeah. You?" No answer. Not that day. Not the next. When I finally saw her again, it was by accident. She was leaving the florist with a bouquet of lilies, hair pulled back, sunglasses on. For a second, I thought maybe she hadn't seen me. Then she stopped, smiled. But the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Lee, hey," I said. "You've been quiet." "Yeah," she said, adjusting the flowers like they needed rescuing. "Had some family things. My son was visiting." The words dropped heavy. Son. I'd known she was divorced. I hadn't thought much about the rest. "Didn't know you had kids," I managed. She nodded. "He's 16 now. Lives with his dad most of the time." That math sat between us. 16. The same age I'd been when she used to drive me and Noah to school. Something inside me shifted. Not exactly jealousy. Not shame. Just a sharper awareness of how far apart our worlds really were. She noticed. "You okay?" "Yeah. Just. Didn't realize." "Didn't realize what?" "That you have a whole other life I don't fit in." She didn't answer right away. Just looked at me. Not angry, not sad. Maybe just tired. "I didn't mean to make you think you ever did," she said softly. That one hit deeper than I expected. We stood on the sidewalk, people brushing past, the smell of lilies and traffic between us. She started to say something, stopped, then reached out and touched my sleeve. The lightest contact imaginable. "I didn't pull away because of you," she said. "I pulled away because of me." Then she turned, walked to her car, and left me there holding that half sentence like it meant something. That night, I opened my messages. Typed out, "I miss talking to you." I stared at it for 5 full minutes. Then deleted it. The phone screen reflected my face back at me, tired, maybe older than I was. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It was raining again the night she showed up at my door. Not the cinematic kind of rain, just steady, cold, ordinary. The kind that seeps into everything. I opened the door before she even knocked. She looked startled for a moment, then gave a small, resigned smile. Your light was on, she said, like that explained everything. She was damp around the edges. Sleeves rolled, hair sticking to her cheek. She held a paper bag in one hand. I made too much soup, she said, didn't want to waste it. We both knew that wasn't true. But I stepped aside anyway. The smell filled the small kitchen, ginger, garlic, something faintly citrus. She ladled soup into 2 bowls, the quiet between us only broken by the sound of rain hitting the windows. We sat across from each other, steam rising between us like a curtain. I watched her hands move, careful, deliberate. She kept avoiding my eyes. Finally I said, you didn't have to come. I know, she said. I almost didn't. Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. She looked up then, and the weight of all the almost hung in the air between us. I keep thinking I should apologize, she said quietly. For whatever this is. You don't have to, I said. She gave a sad little smile. That's the problem. You never ask me to. I didn't know what to do with that. My fingers tightened around the edge of the table. I tried to stop thinking about you, I admitted. Didn't work. She blinked, once, slow. You're not supposed to say things like that. I know. The rain outside softened, like it was listening. She reached for her tea, her hand trembling just a little. You remind me of who I was before everything got complicated. Is that a bad thing? It's dangerous, she said. Because it makes me want to stay. Neither of us moved for a long time. Then she reached across the table, hesitated, and finally rested her hand over mine. It wasn't romantic, not really, just human. Her hand was warm, the kind of warmth that makes you realize how cold you've been. I can't promise this would make sense, she said. Not to anyone, maybe not even to us. I don't need it to, I said quietly. I stopped. There were too many endings to that sentence. Want you here, don't want to lose this, don't make this disappear again. She squeezed my hand, a small, steady pressure. You'll be fine, Ely, she whispered. I almost believed her. When she finally stood to go, she lingered by the door. The air smelled of soup and rain and something like finality. She looked at me, eyes soft, unreadable. Thank you, she said. For what? For not pretending this never happened. I nodded once. Okay, it was all either of us could say. It's been 6 months since that night. Since the soup, the rain, the quiet, okay. Nothing really changed, except everything did. We never had a conversation that labeled what we were. We didn't need to. The next week, she texted me, tea at 80:47, that strange, specific time, her humor quiet and precise. I showed up early, it felt exactly right. Now it's a rhythm. Some mornings at the cafe, same table near the window. Sometimes my coffee is already waiting black, the way she remembered. Sometimes I bring her tea, and she teases that I never steep it long enough. We don't talk about the weeks she disappeared, or the years we lost before that. We talk about smaller things, new recipes, her son's exams, a movie she fell asleep halfway through. But underneath the small talk is something steady, an ease that wasn't there before. One Sunday, we ended up at the same park. Same bench, same crook tree leaning just slightly left. It wasn't raining this time. She sat beside me, kicked off her shoes again. Still think I make you feel ridiculous? I asked. She smirked. No, just old. I laughed. That's progress. She leaned back, head tilted toward the branches, sunlight slipping across her face. You ever notice, she said, how quiet everything feels when you stop trying to name it? I did. That silence. That's what we'd been circling the whole time. She doesn't stay over. I don't expect her to. Sometimes she leaves a thermos on my counter with my name scrawled on masking tape. Sometimes I find a book in my bag that definitely didn't buy. It's not dramatic, it's just steady. Real, the kind of closeness that doesn't need proving. Once, she mentioned a patient at work, a man in his 80s who'd lost his wife. He said the thing he missed most, she told me, was having someone to share the ordinary with. I didn't say anything. Just reached over, lightly, and turned her mug so the handle faced her. The same small gesture she'd done for me months ago. She smiled. You remember everything, don't you? Only the quiet parts. It's late now. I'm sitting by the same cafe window, watching the light shift against the glass. She's running a few minutes behind. I know she will be. She always is. The clock on the wall ticks over to 8:47, and when she finally walks in, brushing rain from her hair, I don't stand, I just smile. She sits, her hand brushing mine, small, familiar enough, no declaration, just this earned peace, warm tea, and the space between words.